Welcome to Soulful Living Podcast. I'm Sun, and this series is about the journey to intuitive healing and living in optimal health. Hey guys, welcome back. This week, I'm going to talk about transitioning to vegan, which was kind of inspired off the back of last week's podcast, which was about hidden ingredients, those little nasties that even vegans don't even really know about. So you can check that out in last week's episode 8 if you want to know more. So I started talking about some of the issues or freak out moments last week that new vegans can experience, and that it is absolutely normal. So don't think that you are the only one there. We've all been through it. But this week I thought it would be nice and useful if I explained this topic a little bit deeper. So just so you don't feel totally alone. Well, it's great to be back in a regular routine again, I must say. January was a little wonky for me with moving house, mic issues, and trying to have some downtime as well, which I talked about last week with the digital detoxing. That kind of extended past my 1 or 2 weeks that I was hoping for into, I think, probably about a month, I would say it was close to. And actually, I'm still really having difficulties with technical issues. So I do apologize for that, but I'm back and I'm hoping to get back into my regular routine. So anywho, I'm super happy to chat more about our topic this week and to bring you some of the explanations behind what happens to all of us in this transition period when we go from being either omnivorous to vegan, or vegetarian to vegan, or omnivorous, vegetarian, and then vegan. So this is a topic that I'm very passionate about because I went cold turkey, but I didn't really, because I went from being a very heavy meat eater to being a vegetarian by health choices, not for the animals at that stage. Even though I'm a huge and have been a huge animal lover my whole entire life, it did come from health issues that I was having that kind of forced me into vegetarian, and didn't look back though. Absolutely loved it. It made massive differences to my health. But years later, I did start to become a little bit more aware of why was I vegetarian and not vegan. So it made total sense for me to go vegan for the animals. If you've just completed Veganuary, and I know it's in the middle of February, but if you've just completed that and you're, really gung-ho, you want to become a vegan, but you're struggling with what to look for and what to eat and all the kind of things, there are obviously a lot of information out there on the internet, and there's definitely a lot of recipes, especially on Pinterest and YouTube. But what we want to talk about is the transitioning period and how it can affect your skin, it can affect your hair, it can affect your moods and emotions. So that's kind of the thing that I'm going to talk about today, because even though these things are out there as well and you can find access to them, I don't think it's as accessible to hear about some of the emotional changes that we go through. Plenty of recipes, plenty of things out there when it comes to, finding out what vegans do and what they don't do. But when it becomes a very personal topic where it comes back to you, I see so many messages on Facebook groups where, transitioning to vegan or beginner groups, they constantly talk about health. Now, back in the day, I would help a lot of them with the Ayurvedic training that I have and sort of steer them into understanding what was going on from an Ayurvedic point of view. But also, now I have a lot of knowledge since then as well, since completing my Ayurveda. So when I was helping these people, I had obviously the information and knowledge of Ayurveda, but one thing I did notice to kind of understand the terminology of it, or to align it to what you already know, and that's very particular. So what you have is information that's new, and that can even be overwhelming. So we try to align it to what we know, which of course is Western medicine, right? So if Western medicine hasn't done us justice in helping us and we've ended up going vegan because of our health issues that we might have had, then you're kind of like stuck in this little box of not really knowing how to get out of it, and why these changes of going to a vegan diet are actually falling on the negative side, not the positive side. So before we go on, I do want to say it does get better and there are reasons behind it. So that's what I want to talk about today. If you're making a lifestyle change permanent, this week's episode is all about you. And if you haven't already, check out last week's episode where I discussed those hidden labels, because that will also help with your transitioning. So I guess as an overview of what I'll talk about are energy levels, emotional changes, skin problems, and other intolerances that may arise, as well as what non-vegans will say to you. Even I have noticed that there are so many more vegans, and it's definitely something younger people are doing a lot more. So the population, depending on your age, like if you're in your 50s and decide to go vegan, obviously the friends around you are probably not going to understand as much. But if you're in your 20s, most likely there's a lot more people in your age group that possibly are vegan. And it also depends on where you're from. So cultural background, you can feel a little bit isolated because maybe you're living in a country like Australia is a very meat orientated country. So, it can be very difficult, but thankfully Australia has taken off with veganism. So that's wonderful. But I do live in Mexico, and they definitely also are a meat eating country and haven't quite grasped the understanding of veganism. And so I know that the few people I have met here have felt very isolated, and we're talking about actual Mexicans that have turned vegan. In India, not so much, because they're all, have a large population of Hindu and they're, primarily vegetarian, but there is still a lot of unawareness of what veganism is in the world. But thankfully, this is changing dramatically. When I talk about this, the first thing I wanted to chat about today was actually why your energy levels may have decreased since becoming vegan. Like, this is a good answer to give back to those that ask us that stupid question about where do we get our protein from. So now let's talk about protein. So the three main things that cause energy levels to drop and remain low are insufficient protein, insufficient iron, and insufficient calories. The first two can be more easily adjusted or modified, so protein and iron, to incorporate them more in the daily diet or to supplement them. However, the third is much harder for us to get our heads around, because we are used to hearing that we should reduce our calories or keep track of them at least. When you turn vegan, you will need to make sure you keep your calories up so that you can obtain your nutritional levels for the daily recommended amounts of each food group or food, like we're talking about carbohydrates and protein and energy here. Basically, eat more. Vegans have to eat more to reach their calorie level. Plant-based food is low in calorie density, but actually very high in nutrients. Not everyone knows that, and here's the catch, of course. You should familiarize yourself with what constitutes a vegan plate. Now, I'm going to leave a link in the show notes that you can take a look at. It will help you understand the portions of what nutrients you require daily and the foods that you get these vitamins from. And just because I said eat more doesn't mean I gave you a pass to eat more vegan junk food, right? So as you would know, just because you are vegan doesn't mean the food is all healthy. In Ayurveda, it's actually encouraged to eat from the 6 tastes: sour, salty, pungent, which is spicy, bitter, and astringent, and sweet. But of course, any overeating of one is going to cause an imbalance. Well, the same principles apply in Western culture. Eating unhealthy will eventually affect you. Yes, it will, sooner or later. And of course, that's what we don't want. So eating in proportion and making sure you're getting the nutrients that you're meant to be getting, and also definitely the protein. So we have to shift the mindset into replacing the protein in other ways, not from, animal products. And the same, obviously, with the vitamin B12, but we'll get to that. So to avoid low energy because of lack of calories, what steps we should take when we're transitioning is that Obviously, insufficient calories in the diet can cause very low energy levels when transitioning to vegan. And this is caused because plant-based foods tend to be lower in that calorie density, which I've already mentioned, which means that not only does a person have to change their eating habits from omnivore to vegan, they may also need guidance in understanding that they should eat more to fulfill their calorie intake for the day. This will actually help you to increase your energy levels. And during the transition period, here are some important things to understand. Number 1, avoid undereating. Number 2, increase that volume of food. You will actually consume more than what you would have on your plate probably than when you were on an omnivorous diet. And avoid vegan junk foods that have little to no nutritional value. I know I am the worst at this. I love my sweet. I actually just really enjoy making desserts and cheeses. So when I'm in the kitchen, I do love cooking, but I find that when I really just want to get in the kitchen and make something, it's either going to be, most of the time, it's going to be something sweet or it's going to be a vegan cheese. And that probably tells you a lot about me, but I do have to limit that sweetness, because if I could, I'd probably eat, especially after baking, just want to get in there and eat like all of the cake. Well, not maybe all of it, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I do find that sweetness is the one thing that I have to be a little bit more of controlled about in my diet. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people, right? But when it comes to vegan sweets, try to make them yourself, because you absolutely 100% know what's in them. And I don't use refined sugar, so I know that the sweetener that I'm using is something that I've purchased and I've researched. And I believe, most things that we buy in the supermarkets have excess calories due to excess salt, excess sugar. And making a dessert is not actually that difficult, really. It's a lot easier than, unless you're going for something really full on with lots of different layers and doing shortbread or, pastry or something like that. But most desserts are pretty simple to make. Yeah. And just knowing what you're actually eating. Emotional and physical changes do actually happen, believe it or not, and what we eat affects our hormones. So when you are transitioning to a vegan diet, you may actually find yourself wondering, what the hell is going on with my body? Wasn't I meant to be getting healthier by eating vegan food or transitioning to being vegan? And why are all these changes happening to me emotionally? Well, and also, wasn't I meant to feel overall greatness with the way my body is transforming? Total normal questions to be asking ourselves. And this can, of course, cause us to feel down. And on top of the hormones changing, our emotions are affected by it from the hormone level, and also because you're feeling like this was meant to be this amazing new diet that was going to change your life. Well, let's look at those two words. Diet, it is not. Lifestyle, it is. So think about it as something that you need to take time to adjust to. And when you think with that kind of rationality, you won't be putting the focus on, or that pressure on yourself to make it like we do when we go on a diet, like giving ourselves a time frame and wanting to see results really quickly. This is a gentle, natural way that your body has to adjust to what food you're now putting into it, and what food is no longer something that it can hang on to. And that, of course, creates a lot of problems. So the thing is, when animal products are removed from the body, it does affect your hormones, and going cold turkey from an omnivorous diet is when it is actually more likely to occur. And I don't think it's like a bad thing to do, but I think you're going to run into more problems than if you transition a little bit slower and allow your body to go through the change at a speed that it can adjust to. And then you probably won't notice, the differences in your body so much. It won't be such a dramatic change, especially if you come from a really unhealthy diet previously and then you're trying to go to a really healthy diet. You're definitely going to see some big changes. I also think that by reducing to a vegetarian diet, before going vegan, you have a far better chance of making this transition a lot smoother for you. And of course, maintaining it, like that's a big part of it. It just makes more sense, right? But hey, many have been known to do it. So if you are transitioning from omnivorous to vegan, wow, go for it, and just know that you're probably going to see a lot more physical changes and emotional changes, especially emotional changes. As I mentioned before, I didn't intentionally do it because veganism was not in sight when I went to vegetarian, but I definitely think I did not notice as many changes as what people would if they went from omnivorous, or if I'd gone from my meat eating days to just straight into veganism. And I also don't think I probably would have been able to handle it, to be fair. So some other things that cause a lot of confusion in the beginning are why you have a headache. So feeling achy or starting seeing skin problems that you never had before, these are all perfectly normal. Not everyone reacts this way though. It's not like you're going to have all of these things. Like some people might have energy levels dropping and others might have headaches or skin problems. You might not have everything happen to you. I would hope not. Anywho, headaches and skin problems are both related to toxin release. So as your diet changes, the hormones do react and the toxins are then released for the purpose of elimination. So this can cause emotional and digestive issues. And I will say, if you're going to go through that, you probably will have some kind of fatigue, because if you've got any kind of diarrhea or constipation, that is going to make you feel with less energy. And I guess I don't want to confuse the two, because fatigue, yes, is to do with energy, but it can be a little bit more. Like chronic fatigue is pretty full on, you just want to sleep all the time. So in Ayurveda though, we think of fiery red for Pitta dosha. Now, if you want to know, I just want to stop here. If you want to know more about the doshas and Ayurveda in regards to what they are or what you are in response to the Ayurvedic diet, then I will leave a really good link to a website that I use called Banyan Botanicals. And they probably are my Ayurvedic Bible. Like if I recommend anyone to Ayurveda, then I always say just go to that website. There's so much on there, and they also make their own supplements and whatever, but more for the information. Plus you can do a dosha quiz on there. I obviously would like to work towards this on a website, like actually do that, but it's a lot of work to put it all into a website. So sometime in the future, hopefully I will get around to doing that. Anywho, if there is an imbalance in Pitta, the first signs are usually heat in the body. Pitta, I just want to give you an overview though, just quickly. So the elements rule the doshas. Okay, so so one of the elements that rules Pitta more predominantly is the element of fire. So that's why when we talk about redness and heat in the body, it's because of that. Because, on the other end of the scale, you have Vata that is ruled by air and ether. So when there's an imbalance in there, you tend to have a lot of gas, or, maybe you're a little bit scattered, whatever the reasons are for whatever imbalance you have under the Vata dosha. So it's more air related. As with Pitta, it is far more heat related. And so how this comes out in our bodies is through our skin, or obviously if you're feeling hot, but a different level of hot, you will notice redness, of some degree, or heat coming out of the body. In modern medicine though, this kind of heat or red kind of diseases would be things like acne, psoriasis, rosacea, eczema. So when switching to a plant-based diet, it's important to understand your skin could actually get worse, or you may experience something you've never ever experienced before. While symptoms will usually disappear in 1 to 2 weeks, it is important to understand that increasing your intake of vitamin A and C, as well as omega-3, will help with the process. So best to keep your diet as clean as possible so that the detoxing process can be less noticeable. When someone is transitioning to a vegan diet, they may even experience difficulties with their digestion. Typically, these symptoms would be bloating, constipation, diarrhea, and just general discomfort in the stomach. This is because of the actual increase in fiber. Our bodies are used to what we eat. So if we change that up, it takes a while for our bodies to adjust. In the long term, increasing your fiber will have extremely healthy effects on your body. But of course, the transition stage can be very difficult. If symptoms don't cease after a few days or a couple of weeks at the very most, it might be best to seek medical advice. I would probably suggest electrolytes are good. If you're if you're having diarrhea, electrolytes really do help. But I guess, like I said before, just really know that even the most experienced vegans will have gone through this. I honestly feel that a lot of it has to do with detoxing, and with my Ayurveda knowledge as well, I would definitely say that's the whole point of Ayurveda, is when there is problems in the body, it's usually considered an imbalance, and therefore it is treated through the detoxing process. That's what Panchakarma is all about. There are many levels of Panchakarma, under the banner of Panchakarma, different treatments for different imbalances, and obviously goes along with your doshas. So when transitioning to a vegan diet, some may experience headaches, which are generally caused by the detox effect. This is because on an omnivorous diet, various toxins are stored in the body, particularly the digestive and lymph systems, as well as the kidneys and the liver. When transitioning and reducing animal products, the body goes into a detox stage where the toxins that are stored in the body start to be released for the purpose of elimination. This may be the main cause of emotional and digestive issues, as well as fatigue, and it is encouraged to eat a clean diet during the transition phase so that the body can work out the harmful toxins that need to be released and actually die off. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about are what non-vegans say. Okay, so let's talk about that first. It is human nature to be curious about someone's lifestyle choices, and even to the point that the curiosity can turn to hostility. Those choices you have decided to make can make you feel inferior because other people are giving you a bit of that hostility. Well, that's a typical response. I've seen it time and time again, and to be honest, the best course of action is to be prepared with your answers. So going vegan and knowing some of the things that you start to find out, your awareness starts to break away from that standard traditional kind of way of thinking that we have and, we've grown up with. And if I wanted to put it into spiritual terms, I would say it's definitely a heightened experience when you go vegan. I would align it back to my third eye becoming, larger and more aware of what's going on in the world. And that was, a transition for me too. And it took some time, but I do feel as if I'm still constantly learning, but I have learned a lot more in the time I've been vegan than in the time I was an omnivore. So it's very true that vegans and the purpose in which a person decides to go vegan can have various reactions from other people. It is even harder when this is coming from those that are close to us. Typical questions or reactions are generally coming from a place of curiosity. Sometimes they can be quite discouraging or hostile. They may even argue with you or just blatantly point out that they could never give up animal products like cheese and bacon, etc. It is important to understand that these reactions are very common. Being equipped with the knowledge to respond to them will help in the transition. So I'm going to say that typically the following reactions occur when you go vegan. Hostility towards you for becoming vegan and that you are judging them for still eating animal products. Mocking and ridiculing you towards your new choices to be vegan. Some people may even try to tempt you with the food they knew you loved before, which of course was non-vegan. That's a really tough one. That's deceit, but hopefully not too many people experience that. But yeah, that deception can even extend to them adding non-vegan ingredients to your food or telling you, oh, it doesn't matter, it's just a little bit, I had that experience definitely. And pretty much whenever I go somewhere, I just make my own food or I eat before I go. So they pretty much won't tell you that it contains animal products. So does that have cheese in it? Does that have milk in it? Oh, no. Actually, it happened to me last Christmas and I looked at it and I thought it was actually a stuffing. I think some people call it seasoning, but it's, what goes inside like a turkey or whatever, but it was to the side. It hadn't been put in the turkey. And everyone was saying how wonderful it was. So I was like, well, I wouldn't mind having a taste of it, but eating it. And when I asked the person who made it, she was like, nope, there's nothing from an animal in there. And this is actually a little bit of not so much deception, but ignorance and forgetfulness. So I decided not to have it because something was just telling me not to have it. And then about 10 minutes later, she turned around to someone else who was trying it. She's like, oh, yes, it does have, I can't remember what it was, but oh, yes, it does have a bit of this in it. And I was like, thankfully, I didn't try it. So yeah, but there can be mistakes made. It's not someone's just deliberately there and tell you that, it's vegan when it's not vegan. But I'm not saying either that doesn't happen, because it definitely does happen. So the other thing, also nutritional information that is not correct. So we get this continuous unsolicited advice that this has not been backed up with evidence, particularly where vitamin B from and where is your iron and protein coming from. So if you take note of those questions, and I'll probably just try to stick this in the show notes as well, just some of the questions or difficulties you might be faced with. And if that's the case, have those prepared answers. It's as simple as that. It's the best thing. Know what you're going to say in response to anyone that might give you a hard time. So yeah, it's important to understand that all vegans go through this at start, and it's valuable to know that you're improving your nutrition as well as helping the animals. And being supportive people in these social media groups is definitely going to help you as well and assist you through the transition period. So yeah, I guess my advice is to be prepared with your answers. So if you've chosen to become vegan for a reason, and there's something that really, has sparked your interest as to what you're doing, whether it be, it's helping save the animals, whether it's helping save the planet, where are you getting your vitamin B12 from, where's your iron, blah, 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 protein, all those kind of things. Just know what answers, be prepared with it, because people will shock you. People that you think are your best supportive friends and family can possibly turn on you. And that's putting it nicely, I guess, in some cases, because they just don't understand it. So just think of it as their level of understanding is not the same as yours, because they haven't taken that step to turn vegan. But the thing is, you have. And so you will have those reasons why you wanted to change your lifestyle and your eating habits for those reasons. You should be prepared. I guess there have been times, though, that I have just looked at the person that has, said a comment to me and instantly known that their awareness level is actually, it's not their issue, but more that they are just not willing to understand veganism. So I've also encountered that as well. So in this instance, I would twist or divert the conversation towards another topic. I am a big believer in acceptance. So sometimes you have to determine if the effort is really worth it, like whether you should fight the battle or whether you should just turn the conversation to something else. And when I say that, it can be really hard, because this is something that you truly believe in now. And it's something that you're trying to find your place in this new vegan world as well. And you've discovered a lot of things. So that can kind of make us a little bit angry. It can make us a little bit frustrated that not everyone else is on the same page as you. And I must say, in the last several years since I've been vegan, yeah, I guess my thing is I think in the beginning I was probably a lot more wanting to voice my opinion. And I've seen it with new vegans as well. So I think you just have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Will they even listen? And who wins in this kind of situation? Because it's probably better to just move on. That's what I say. I mean, you can obviously give your opinion, but just be really gentle with it, because you don't want to get yourself angry. And, because that's only going to make you feel frustrated and more isolated. My hope, obviously, is that eventually veganism will be the mainstream, and that people will realize the road to a happier, kinder life is through eating healthier and being aware of where the food you eat is coming from. When I think about the questions I've actually been asked, it's probably mostly more attacking, like, oh, why are you vegan? That's so stupid. What do you think? What do you think one person is going to do? Or, or just a curious attitude towards it. But what do you eat? Like, tell me what you eat. Oh, you're not skinny like most vegans are. Like, at least you look healthy. Those kind of questions, or they're not even really questions, are they? They're statements. I've been more attacked, I think, than probably had questions asked. If people do ask me questions, I guess it's more because they're thinking about it. So it's come from a much more gentle place than the people who are like feeling inferior maybe because I'm vegan. And I am such a quiet vegan because I am around a lot of non-vegans. So I don't really talk a lot about veganism because of that. Again, it goes back to that level of understanding. And bringing awareness has been through obviously my podcast and, through my social media. If I was putting out posts about meat, and eating meat, then I'm probably going to get people following me that eat meat. But because my whole soulful living is focused on, soulful living basically, and food, because I love cooking. So, I have that kind of energy being put out there. And so in turn, that's the energy that I'm receiving. And it's probably the thing I love the most about social media is because I choose who I want in that space, basically, and that energy towards myself, and is the energy that I'm giving back to others. And I think that's a good thing to have. So yeah, but if you're, as a vegan, a very activist like type of person as well, like you're on there and you're throwing all this, media out there, some of it sensitive to people, you're probably going to get a lot of people attacking you. And I'm not saying not to do it, because some people, that's their way to do the activism. But for me, and to keep my sanity in check, that I just prefer to live in a more calmer environment and to focus on helping animals, because that's what I do. And so I'm involved in animal rescues and, treatment for animals that are sick, and wholly what I do when I'm in India. And I have been doing it a little bit in Mexico as well. So I do what I can for the animals in other ways. And everyone is different. You have to find where your passion is in regards to veganism and then put your energy into it. Hey guys, thanks for being with us this week. I hope that if you're transitioning to being vegan, that some of this information helped you. On next week's podcast, I'm very excited to have Vegan Jellicle on the show, and his name is Doug, and actually he was a former slaughterhouse worker before turning vegan in 1996. He's well known as an animal rights activist, and he's a runner, nutritionist, and personal trainer. I really look forward to having him on the podcast next week, and I hope you guys do too. Stay tuned. Until next week, take care, lovelies. So I hope that you live your life in good health, eat lightly, breathe deeply, live moderately, cultivate cheerfulness, and maintain an interest in life. Namaste.